Hello, this is Cheesy, and it's time for yet again another screencast. So far in our series, we have these two beautiful scenarios that talk about checking out when adopting a puppy. And we really enjoy the fact that we've got this natural text description of the system that we're about to build. But there are some cases when we don't really need this. There are some cases when all we need is a test to execute. We don't have a team to collaborate with. We don't have a product owner to work with on the specifications. And in those cases, writing these scenarios might be an overhead or might be completely unnecessary. And in those cases, I turn to a Ruby gem called RSpec. And in this episode, we're going to see how we can use RSpec to write these exact same tests. In fact, when we're finished, we're going to end up with the same two tests in a slightly lighter weight implementation. Now, in order to do this, we're going to have to do just a little bit of setup. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new directory called spec. And inside of this directory, I'm going to create a new file called spec helper. And this is where we set up the initialization for Cucumber. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to go ahead and add my lib directory to the load path, because as you can realize, I'm going to be loading some of the files from that. I also need to start requiring some of the gems that I'm going to use. Obviously, RSpec is going to be used. Page object is going to be used. Since I'm going to actually initialize my browser object in this file as well, I need to require water WebDriver. And I'm going to also use data magic. Okay, and last but not least, I'm going to also use require all to load the lib directory, much the same way that I did in my Qs. And then I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, now the next thing that I need to do is I need to set up the configuration for my RSpec. Now I do this by calling the configure method, passing it a block, and inside of this block I do all of my setup, all my initialization. And because I want to actually use the page factory methods and the navigation and such, I'm going to need to include that. And the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and set up a global before and after here. Okay, we'll create my browser. I'm going to go ahead and resize it so that it runs the same way that the Qs do. Okay, and the next thing I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and create my after block, my global after. And I'm just going to close the browser at that point. Now, you might think that we're ready to get rolling here, but we're not quite there yet. You see, there were two things that we were doing in Cucumber World that I actually want to be able to do here as well. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to move these. And the first was, as you recall, we were using this custom matcher. In order for me to be able to use that, I need to go ahead and move that under my lib directory. So I'll do that right now. And very good. The last thing I want to do is, as you recall, I declared my routes inside of my env.rb. Well, I don't want to do it there any longer because I want to be able to use the same routes in my specs. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file inside of lib and just call it routes. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this route to there, and that probably does it for me. To make sure I didn't break anything, I'm going to actually rerun my Qux. Hopefully it's okay. And they are. Excellent. Okay. Now, I want to turn my attention to actually writing my tests. So I created the spec directory, but the next thing that we typically do when we're writing RSpec tests is we'll create directories under there. And in the way that we're using it right now, I recommend that we create a directory for each functional area of the page, of the application. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a new directory here, and let's call it checking out. And inside of there, I'm going to create my tests. And we'll start by creating a new Ruby file and checking out spec.rb is what I'll call this. And the first thing I'm going to need to do is require that spec helper file that we just had in the previous, that we added in the previous step. And now, Cucumber starts with something called a describe block. And what this is sort of the outer definition of what it is that we are doing. Checking out when using the puppy adoption site. Now, I'm going to write 2 tests in here, but before each test, I need to visit the home page. Okay, and now what I can do is I can go ahead and write my tests, or I can define them yet further by using context blocks. Let's use a context block. And there you have. When completing the adoption, it should display a thank you message. Now, as you see, I'm pretty much writing the exact same code inside of here that I would write in the Cucumber world. Okay, so there is my first test. Let's go ahead and run this and see if it's going to run like we would expect it to. And as you can see, everything is all wired up together just like it would be with the Qux. It used the navigation, it used data magic, everything is just fine. As you'll also see here, we do get a little bit of text output. Checking out when using the puppy adoption site, when completing adoption should display a thank you message. Let's go ahead and write our second test. little bit of formatting, but here we go. Okay. Yet again, let's go ahead and run both tests. Oop, no, I think this is actually going to run the first one. Well, we'll see. Well, no, it's running both. Good. I wasn't sure which keystroke I hit there. And wonderful. So, as you can see, the amount of code that we had to write was quite a bit less. In this case, we put everything right in one file as opposed to having both the feature file and the step definition file. We get to use our same page objects, we get to use the same navigation, we get to use the same data setup and the routes. So this is a nice lightweight way to create tests. I hope you enjoyed this very short screencast.